Too late. I want to respond to the last line of the song we were reading. A human life, when truly seen, is briefer than a kiss. I say our only response to that is just a kiss longer. Well, the title of today's sermon was created over a month ago, and we've traveled some distance since then, so I'm just going to say something briefly about sin that will probably bring relief to you all. In that we've done so much for at a minimum 1,500 years on pounding out the sin of individual behavior. I'm making a declaration today that there is no individual sin. That's it. If our center value is kindness, and we try to move our life accordingly, and when we are not kind, we reflect upon that and try to understand what motivated us not to be kind, and we work on that, and in a sense we correct that, so that the next time it's the very same kind of situation, we choose kindness rather than unkindness, then we're good. Because we're going to say things that are hurtful and not mindful at times, and our responsibility, in essence, may not be not to say them, is to recognize we are going to say and do things that are not kind throughout our lives. Our responsibility is to reflect, to understand what was going on with me that I did that, and how can I change that. However, our culture does not escape sin. I'm going to say there is only institutional sin. Period. That institutions sin and need to be held accountable. So that's all about sin. We're done. Pretty simple.
But what about bullying?
In a Unitarian Universalist community, if we see bullying or I am bullying, I'm also called to reflect on that and work with that, and that's on me, and I've got to take care of that. It's not, in a way, if I'm going to mature as a Unitarian Universalist, I've got to get to a point where I call myself into account. Now, recently something happened, and somebody in the community said, Gregory, I think you ought to be moving in this direction with what you're contributing to the community, and I heard that, and they were correct. And I was caught up into my own stuff. And so we need to have a community that can call us to an account, but it's nobody's responsibility except mine to determine where I've stepped wrong. And we mature in that direction. That's my hope, and that's our teaching as Unitarian Universalists. So I want to shift to happiness. And talk a bit about our spirituality and how to nurture our spiritual selves in this world. And I'd like to begin, and I think in your, not brochure, flyer, bulletin, there's a copy of this poem by Borges on happiness, and have that as kind of like one of the readings that guides us. Whoever embraces a woman is Adam. The woman is Eve. Everything happens for the first time. I saw something white in the sky. They tell me it is the moon. But what can I do with a word and a mythology? Trees frighten me a little. They are so beautiful. The calm animals come closer so that I might tell them their names. The books in the library have no letters. They spring forth when I open them. Leaping through the atlas, I project the shape of Samothrace. Whoever lights a match in the dark is inventing fire. In inside the mirror, and others wait in ambush. Whoever looks at the ocean sees England. Whoever utters a line of Lillicrone has entered into battle. I have dreamt Carthage and the legions that destroyed Carthage. I have dreamt the sword and the scale. Praise be the lover. Praise be the love wherein there is no possessor and no possessed, but both surrender. Praise be the nightmare which reveals to us that we have the power to create hell. Whoever goes down to a river goes down to the Ganges. Whoever looks at an hourglass sees the dissolution of an empire. Whoever plays with a dagger foretells the death of Caesar. Whoever dreams is every human being. In the desert I saw the young sphinx which had just been sculpted. There is nothing else so ancient under the sun. Everything happens for the first time, but in a way, that is eternal. Whoever reads my words is inventing them. Everything happens for the first time. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we really felt that everything happens for the first time? That every morning I wake up, I see the sun, the sky, the trees, the grass, the colors, my love, my family, for the first time. And I don't get used to it. I don't take things for granted. That they're alive in me and vibrant in me, and there's a vitality that gets nurtured all the time. All the time. Happiness. We live in a difficult time. When hasn't been so? You always hear the biblical scripture, there'll be wars and rumors of wars. Well, yes, there have in my life and previous thousands of years, there have been wars and rumors of wars, and we live in the context of a society that participates in wars and rumors of wars and has the infrastructure that produces wars and rumors of wars. We do live there. How am I to take care of myself spiritually and access those spiritual promises that I can live in peace, that I can have happiness, that we can have closeness, that we can have intimacy, and the weight of the difficulties of the world don't bear upon us so much so that I lose myself and I lose that vitality and I become, as a theologian Kierkegaard talked about, a smooth stone, and I lose what is uniquely me. We can't hold the fullness of all the ills in this world, in our imaginations, with the sense of empathy. It's not possible to do that. I've tried. It's miserable to do that. I thought one time maybe that was our calling. Have any of you seen the movie with Bruce Willis, The Fifth Element? Yeah. The Fifth Element. And I might get this wrong, but mostly I don't think I've made it wrong to make my point, but I'm not beyond that. This woman falls out of the sky, if I remember correctly, and she's going to be the savior of the world. But she's innocent, and she really doesn't know the world and the history of the world. So that in her movement to actualize saving the world, she catches hold of the video of the TV, and they run, and she's looking at the history of humanity and all the history of the wars. She gets so overwhelmed, she begins to cry, and she says, "There's no hope." And in essence, quit, die. There's no hope. Well, I think if we did that all the time, that would be us. There would be no hope. But how do we get to the point where when I open a book thought, and there's a dialogical process going on that when it's finished, there's life. There's more. I am more than I was. I'm just not reading words and they stay out there and I gain knowledge, but there's an engagement. How does that happen? As Jorge talks about that. How does that happen? How do I love and there's no, that I'm not possessed and I'm not possessing, that both of us surrender in a sense of love and we are free in our love, whether it's with an individual or family or a community, that we are at ease with ourselves. How do I get there? We search spiritual traditions to help us get there. In my life, it just doesn't happen. If I have a tendency, I have a tendency to accumulate knowledge and kind of keep it out there and separate from my heart. I can remember going through training, not just for myself, but others, and hear supervisors saying that your heart and your mind are not together. You need to get more of your heart in your work and what you're doing and what you're reading because they've been separated. Well, at first I took it personal, because since they were saying it to me, take it personal. But then I realized that's how we're trained, to separate our hearts and our minds. If our hearts were fully actualized, and just full and our bodies could feel it, and our hearts were just moving out to the world, how would we be today with all that is going on? How would we deal with it? So we numb it out, and maybe are taught to numb it out. So we look as Unitarian Universalists. We look at different spiritual traditions. We're not bound by a particular tradition. One thing that's wonderful about who we are as Unitarian Universalists. I can read Sufis. I can read the Christian text, the Jewish text, the Islamic text. I can read these texts. I can read what I consider sacred literature from Sinead O'Connor, from Grace Griffin. That when I read that, it speaks to me and moves me. I consider that sacred literature. So we're not bound, so we look. How do we, in this world that we find ourselves, how do we navigate our way to that place where we can be at ease with ourselves and others in a difficult and troubled world? So I found this work by Pir Zah Inyat Khan, who is the head of the Universal Sufi International Organization. And in reading a speech that he gave on July 7th, 2011, he, I think, gives us a path to follow or some thoughts that could be helpful. But at the same time, when I first read the 4 categories, I had a response. So I have to admit that and own that. The first thing, there's 4 main categories, was faith. Whenever I hear faith, I throw a red flag up. I don't know where you are when you hear the word faith. Faith in what? Faith in whom? Those kind of questions. The next was praise. I think, wait a minute, praise. You know, my thing with praise is in a very conservative circle. We're going to have a praise service, which is fine. But we haven't had many praise services at this church. Can you remember? Just strictly praise. So praise, kind of generosity, and then faith in the absent. Faith in the absent. For science-based, technologically oriented people, I want to see it, feel it, touch it before I believe it. Faith in the absent. Now, what he has to say about this faith, it's just not faith in anything or a loose faith. He says, one is having faith in the revelation of all prophets. Literally, faith in what has been sent down in a way from our spiritual ancestors. Now, in his mind, when he says all prophets, my mind isn't knowledgeable enough to say that and deal with that, so I have to go with what I have and understand. And today I'm going to go specifically with faith in the prophets of the Unitarian Universalist tradition. Do I have faith in them? And I am defining faith now as a process that I trust that when I engage the literature from the history of our faith tradition, when I engage that, not just read it to know it, but to engage it, and so that that literature speaks to me and brings life to me, I have faith that that'll help me and be part of my transformation process and move me in the direction of being kinder and seek justice. I do have that faith in our literature, so I engage that literature. So when I hear the person saying faith is a relationship with the tradition, I'm on board, yes. I can say yes to that. For example, in our tradition, we have, in 1863, Olympia Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with Olympia Brown. She was the first woman ordained by the Universalist Church of America. And she writes concerning faith, stand by this faith, work for it, and sacrifice for it. There is nothing in all the world so important as to be loyal to this faith, which has placed before us the loftiest ideal, which has comforted us in sorrow, strengthened us for noble duty, and made the world beautiful. And in 1863, for a woman to be ordained in an official denomination in this nation, I'm going to pay attention to her. That has meaning. That's important. And she said of the Universalist faith, at that point where we're not combined, work for it, sacrifice for it. There's nothing so important as this faith that has the loftiest ideals that would ordain a woman in 1863. Susan B. Anthony, strong and faithful feminist, comes to mind. Ralph Waldo Emerson, who is beautifully holds the tension between the value of the individual and the value of community, finding his support, ironically enough, I guess, in Eastern mysticism, in the Sufi community, is where he finds support for that. Theodore Parker, in his home, he was part of the Underground Railroad for slaves escaping from the South. The Universalist Mary Rice Livermore, another feminist working for the rights of women. In the 1500s, we had prophets fighting for the rights of others. Francis Davis, we had Margaret Fuller, Clarence Skinner in the 1970s, in that era. Today, we have the Unitarian Universalist Earth Ministry. And what I noticed when I look at the faith tradition of who we are and who we've been and how our faith tradition, the people in our lives, what I notice is that we are always on the edge of fighting for rights. For the rights of others, for the rights of ourselves. That's just where we are. So, when this Sufi person says faith is the first, from that perspective, I can say, okay, from this understanding, yes, faith brings life, it brings vitality, it's moving in the direction I haven't seen yet, because as I engage, remember the faith in the unseen, the faith in the absent, that as I read that literature, that I'm in a process of transformation and becoming more than I was the day before. So I have faith in that process, and I have faith in the unseen. I have faith that as I evolve and as I unfold, that there will be more to me, to my mind, to offer to the community, and as a community as we engage one another. Faith. The second, under praise. Again, I'm praise what? Praise who? I got that skeptical mind. What do you mean by that? Many of us have been hurt in religious traditions that have been forceful and oppressive with a particular belief system. And that's one reason why I like our community. We're not dependent upon the belief system. We are more dependent upon a movement of how to be kinder for one another and bring justice in this world. And that's our central value system, not adherence to a particular belief system. So when we take that word praise, and I know from the Sufi tradition, they're also not promoting a particular belief system. But within that sense of praise, he also brings up the words praise, glorification, gratitude, and benediction. Now I'm going, we are in the thick of religious language here. But then, recently in the past 6 months or so, we've been doing a lot with earth theology and paying attention to our earth-centeredness and who we how would that work in an earth-centered theology? How would praise work? And I'm suggesting today that praise is not, it's not words. It's not thought. Praise and these things that he's talking about are more experiences. And I'll read something that I wrote in Vermont that I consider praise. And this was last year. Dandelion seeds are everywhere. The air is full of seed. The earth is thick with water. The sound of it is everywhere. Springs and birthing streams come right from the dirt, following in a familiar path, gathers and sound begins. The experience that I have, that those words reflect upon, I'm saying that is praise. To recognize where you are in this planet. Julie's example of these children picking up the shell and being captured by that. All thought's gone. All sense of identity is gone. All ego is gone. You have let go of yourself and you have been captured at 10, 6, on the beach looking at this shell going, oh, that's praise. That's what that is. That's praise. And my guess is we've all had that experience. The other day I was walking around the pond and it's not diagnosable. Check right up front. I was walking around the pond. Okay. No LSD. And it was just a beautiful day. Blue, white clouds, just beautiful. And I was drawn up into the clouds. It was the weirdest thing, but it was wonderful. I mean, it was just so beautiful and so capturing. And then I had the experience of, so I knew it wasn't real because the same cloud formation I saw all around the planet. You know, I know that much. It's not true. But nonetheless, that's praise. When I am available to be captured by nature and I am just unknowingly let go of myself. So in a way, the I of who I have formed, have been enculturated, my ego, all that's gone. That's praise. And I'm going to also say from a religious perspective, the best that I can understand, that's also glorification. The same thing. And I'm not even sure I know what that means. So and I'll finish these up at the next sermon, the other couple of those, and do that. But what I'm saying is that as Unitarian Universalists, there is a pathway to that easement of who we are as persons, who we are as community, who we are as members of this earth community, and that we can orient our religious sensibilities to nurture that oneness.